You're listening to Paranormal Optimist. My name is Stephanie, and in this podcast, we dissect paranormal topics from the perspective of skeptics, believers, and everyone in between. At the end, it's up to you to decide. Are you a paranormal optimist? And we're back with another episode of Paranormal Optimist. Thank you for joining me again as we take a look at the weirder side of life, science, and just our general existence. Before we dive into today's topic, can you guess what I'm going to say next? Just a reminder that you can learn about absolutely all things Paranormal Optimist by visiting the episode description. There you'll find where to follow the show, all the places to listen if you want to share it with a friend, and a list of all the sources I cited in today's episode. If you have an episode suggestion, a paranormal story to share, or if you'd like to participate in a future episode, send me an email at paranormaloptimist@gmail.com. Some exciting news. The podcast email has officially gotten its first email scam. So that's very exciting. But if you do have any legitimate emails to send me, go ahead and send them. I really look forward to reading it. In today's episode, we will be discussing 3-Eye Atlas. If you're listening to this episode at the time of its release, I'm sure that you have heard of 3-Eye Atlas, at least in passing. The internet has been flooded with stories and speculation on this topic. Some of them are super interesting and monumental for the potential for scientific discovery, while others are nothing more than AI slop and clickbait. I think my bias on this topic will become pretty clear throughout the course of the episode, so stay tuned. Here's what you're getting yourself into with today's episode. First, we discuss what 3-Eye Atlas is. We'll talk about who discovered it, why it's in the news so much, and why we should care enough about it to discuss and debate its origins, paranormal or not. Speaking of the paranormal, the next section will deal with all the reasons why scientists don't believe there's any possibility at all that 3-Eye Atlas is anything other than a naturally occurring object, even if it is a unique and exciting discovery. We'll then cover why people do wonder about the possible intelligent origins of this visitor. We'll dive deep into why people would jump to this conclusion, even when there's absolutely no evidence for these claims. Finally, we'll discuss how to move forward from this discovery with an open mind. We'll discuss what actual proof of intelligent design would look like if we were ever lucky enough to find it. Fingers crossed. 3-Eye Atlas is the third interstellar object that we have discovered entering our solar system. The naming convention here basically says what the object is and who discovered it. 3-Eye meaning third interstellar object, and Atlas being the organization that discovered it. The abbreviation ATLAS stands for the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System. So yeah, we're going to have to talk about what that is, because I actually hadn't heard of this before this research, and I'm really glad that this organization exists. ATLAS is an early warning system developed by the University of Hawaii, which involves constant scanning of the skies to look for moving objects. This system is funded by NASA and consists of 4 telescopes. 2 of these telescopes are in Hawaii, one is in Chile, and the other is in South Africa. ATLAS works in conjunction with other teams all over the world to identify moving objects, namely asteroids, which could be a threat to the Earth due to their size, trajectory, and distance from the planet. Whenever Atlas discovers an object that requires further investigation, the observation is immediately reported to the Minor Planet Center, or the MPC. This is a division of the International Astronomical Union, also known as the IAU. Also known as the group of scientists who stripped Pluto of her planethood. by changing her class from planet to dwarf planet. R.I.P. Pluto, never forget. But getting back to the point, the MPC is responsible for the classification of minor bodies in the solar system. This includes things like dwarf planets, comets, and natural satellites. Once ATLAS submits targeted observations to the MPC, it uploads them to an online database called the NEO Confirmation Page. This site is monitored constantly by astronomers all over the world who take the data and use it to calculate the object's orbit. They then use those calculations to determine if the object is a threat to the Earth. This data is also separately analyzed by the Scout Hazard Assessment webpage, which is a NASA-maintained page dedicated to using sophisticated computer programs to interpret the data, checking for immediate threats. All of this data is also publicly available and accessible to anyone anywhere in the world. I will include links to both the NEO Confirmation page and the Scout Hazard Assessment page in the episode description. Check it out. So that is what 3i Atlas is and who discovered it. But why is it in the news so much lately? If some of what we are talking about today sounds familiar, it's because in our third episode, we talked about something very similar to 3i Atlas, and that was our friend Oumuamua. If you don't know what Oumuamua is, I'll summarize it briefly here, but I'd recommend going back and listening to that episode if you want all the gritty details. Oumuamua was important because it was the very first interstellar object that we were able to identify and document the existence of with astronomical instruments. It also kicked off a debate of sensationalism within the scientific and popular community regarding what the heck it actually was. This, of course, brought Avi Loeb to the scene, a ridiculously accomplished and experienced Harvard astrophysicist, theoretical physicist, and general alien optimist. He was the man who rather chaotically threw the suggestion out there that if we can't identify what Oumuamua is with any certainty, then it could be possible that it was something of intelligent origin. Perhaps alien garbage or an ancient artifact of a past civilization. By and large, the majority of scientists today believe that Oumuamua was likely just a type of comet that we have never seen before. Its uniqueness and its strangeness easily explainable by our overall lack of data regarding interstellar objects. A short 2 years after Oumuamua, we discovered our second interstellar object. This one was called 2I Borisov, this one being far less dramatic and certainly less sensationalized or even talked about at all by anyone outside of the astronomy community due to its quick identification as a typical comet with normal cometary behavior. It held none of the mystery that Oumuamua did. So, Oumuamua was first, then we had 2I Borisov. Why are people consuming endless clickbait articles right now about 3i Atlas? What is all the fuss about? Something that sets 3i Atlas apart from Oumuamua is that we didn't realize Oumuamua existed until it had already completely passed through our solar system, as in it was already gone by the time we realized that it was ever here in the first place. We could not do any live analysis or observation of the object as it passed through our solar system. We noticed 3i Atlas while it was still in our solar system, and it is still in our solar system right now as I write this. Current estimates and projections predict that this object will not leave the solar system until at least March of 2026. So that essentially is what makes 3i Atlas very exciting for the scientific community now. We know it's here, and we have the chance to study it while it's still in our solar system. But just as was the case with Oumuamua, we have factions forming. I don't even want to call this a war between optimists and skeptics at this point, because that's not really what it is. But it is a question about whether or not it is at all likely that 3i Atlas is proof of extraterrestrial life. Why not to believe? On the topic of the now 3 interstellar objects we have discovered, an article I located on the Planetary Society's website had this to say. All 3 interstellar objects studied so far are thought to be comet-like, which supports theories about planet formation and the ejection of icy bodies. But they are all slightly different as well. When Oumuamua entered the scene, its strange, seemingly oblong shape sparked debate about its nature, even prompting speculation that it could be an alien artifact, although nearly all scientists believe it isn't. 3I Atlas, on the other hand, is clearly a comet, as is Borisov. 3I Atlas is likely larger, though, with a nucleus estimated to be about a kilometer in diameter and the length of 10 football fields. So, if 3I Atlas is even less unique than Oumuamua, why is there so much clickbait? Seriously, it was the clickbait alone that made me want to do a quick episode about this topic. I was getting notifications on my phone almost every single morning about 3I Atlas. The clickbait is just so strong with this one. It's ridiculous and fear-mongering, but strong nonetheless. For example, let me just run through a few headlines that I found in my Google search, which killed all optimism for me that anything besides the comet hypothesis for 3I Atlas is grounded in fact. Alien spacecraft heading to Earth. Is 3I Atlas a comet or an alien spacecraft? 3I Atlas could be a huge alien ship. Does 3I Atlas generate its own energy? New data reveals that 3I Atlas is alive. 3I Atlas. The truth is way scarier than you think. 3I Atlas just sent a signal to the moon. Yikes! So that's just a handful of some juicy article titles. But honestly, there were a lot more, along with countless videos that, after about 2 minutes, I simply could not stomach watching, despite their entertainment value. Listen, I am an alien optimist. I believe in the logic that makes it feel impossible that we are alone in the universe. But as Avi Loeb writes about in his first book about Oumuamua, I think the truth is going to arrive quietly. It's not going to arrive with a bang. It's going to take the form of subtle scientific discovery. And honestly, it will probably go unnoticed by most of the population because of how mundane it will be and how well-trained most people have been to ignore the science behind extraterrestrial life. It's not going to be something obtained from AI-generated articles and videos with AI voiceovers paired with, again, AI images of alien greys on the lawn of the White House. Speaking of Avi Loeb, if you Google, why is there so much clickbait about 3I Atlas? He is specifically called out as the culprit. Much like with his approach towards Oumuamua, his speculations about the endless possibilities of what we may one day find, combined with his general notoriety and familiarity with the public space, led some to take his speculations as proof and evidence, which, to be fair, probably was not his intention, even though that is certainly what the result was. The thing you have to keep in mind about Avi Loeb is that he is a man of science, but he is also curious, imaginative, optimistic, and philosophical, none of which are bad traits for a scientist to have, and arguably are traits that make him a better scientist. But what the public needs to remember is that we still need evidence. The average person needs to force themselves to sort out things that we actually and legitimately know from the things that we just think might be true somewhere someday. Now more than ever in our history, this is an extremely important difference that we have to recognize. In my opinion, this is what is happening right now. Some people are misquoting Avi Loeb, They are taking his words out of context, or they are using his theoretical musings and presenting it as if it's fact, which is just dishonest and a disservice to the public. I saw one video that teased Avi Loeb reacting to findings about 3I Atlas, only to find that the entire video was based on Loeb simply stating that 3I Atlas is not a normal comet. Literally, the full quote from Loeb is, "It's not a normal comet." People took those 5 words and referenced them as scientific proof that the alien invasion is here. My thoughts about Avi Loeb and why he continues to speculate, even when he knows the effect his speculation has on the public, is that his actions are rooted in good intentions. In an article on Medium.com, Loeb discusses a paper that he co-authored called "Is the Interstellar Object 3I Atlas Alien Technology?" It's a clickbait title. But here's a quote from that article that I think explains his intentions perfectly. The paper stated explicitly, "We strongly emphasize that this paper is largely a pedagogical exercise with interesting discoveries and strange serendipities worthy of record in the scientific literature. By far the most likely outcome will be that 3I Atlas is a completely natural interstellar object, probably a comet, and the authors await the astronomical data to support this likely origin." This paper is currently under peer review, and I can only imagine the pressure that will be applied by mainstream reviewers on the editors to decline its publication. One of the main reasons I co-authored this second paper is to encourage observers to collect as much data as possible in order to prove this hypothesis wrong. If instead of putting Galileo Galilei under house arrest, the Vatican would have been eager to look through the telescopes and prove him wrong, then the clergy would have corrected course long before the Vatican's official 1992 statement that Galileo was right. Honestly, I do have respect for this approach. I talked about that exact same example of Galileo in my first episode when I discussed how the history of science is just the history of humans getting things wrong. He's basically saying, yes, it's probably a comet, but make sure that you prove it is one before you start saying what it's not. But beyond the clickbait and beyond the logical explanations and the thought experiments, are there any real anomalies in 3I Atlas that can give hope to the paranormal optimists? Why to believe? Is 3I Atlas special? There are several reasons why scientists are excited about 3I Atlas, beyond the fact that humans are still in their infancy when it comes to collecting data about interstellar objects. Just like with Oumuamua, there are a few characteristics about 3I Atlas that make it a bit hard to immediately identify as a known and naturally occurring object. Size. 3I Atlas is enormous. In reading about 3I Atlas, I see a lot of excited discussion about the size of its nucleus. Now, I know a lot of you out there are probably close to my age, so I want to point out that yes, the nucleus is the powerhouse of the cell, but that's not what they are talking about. The nucleus of a comet refers to the solid core, typically made of ice, dust, or other bits of space debris. The ice here can be composed of different chemicals or frozen gases, but what we're talking about is the physical center of the comet, which leads to its overall size and mass. The nucleus of 3I Atlas is estimated to be anywhere from 0.32 to 5.6 kilometers, depending on what you read. which of course is a huge discrepancy, similar to the discrepancies in sizes reported for Oumuamua. But if the upper estimate of the size here is correct, that means that 3I Atlas is at least 14 times longer than Oumuamua, with a mass that is 10 million times that of the first interstellar object. I know that factor sounds ridiculous, so don't worry, I cited my source, so check it out in the episode description. Composition. 3I Atlas is also interesting when it comes to what it's actually made of. Observations reported by the James Webb Space Telescope indicate that it has a high carbon dioxide to water ratio, which is completely different than other comets we've observed. This composition also leads the comet to have a completely different type of outgassing than we've seen in other comets. So, like Oumuamua, the mechanism behind the outgassing in this object is something we've never seen before. And it's not even the same outgassing mechanism that we saw in Oumuamua. Trajectory. If you remember, one of the strangest details about Oumuamua that led some to believe that it was not a comet was its strange orbital behavior. From what I have read, this is also the case with 3I Atlas. Apparently, the shape of 3I Atlas's trajectory is more hyperbolic, and the speed at which it is moving is far faster than other interstellar objects. It's also coming from the opposite direction of previous visitors, possibly being the first visitor from a totally different part of the Milky Way galaxy. Fear. We already talked about how massive 3I Atlas is. The sheer size of this object is important for another reason we have not yet discussed: fear. The entire point of the Atlas organization is to identify and alert the scientific community about objects that could be a threat to the Earth. A collision event with an object the size of 3I Atlas would be catastrophic. Depending on which part of the Earth it hit, it could cause anything from tectonic shock waves, fires, and mega tsunamis. It would also be damaging to the Earth's atmosphere, in that the impact would eject massive amounts of dust and debris into the atmosphere, which would prevent the sun's light from reaching the Earth's surface. This would trigger global climate changes, causing things such as temperature drops and acid rain. The lack of sunlight would also affect ecosystems of flora, which would have a domino effect on fauna. Essentially, it would disrupt all global systems and lead to mass extinction events. This is what happened to the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. In an extremely simplified chain of events, an asteroid hit, plants died due to lack of sunlight, plant-eating dinosaurs died of starvation when there were no more plants, and eventually, meat-eating dinosaurs died of starvation as well. It's not a pretty picture. It's terrifying to imagine that with all of our technology, that we could identify such a threat, know about it, and then be able to do nothing but wait for the inevitable to happen. I don't know if you've noticed, but masses and mobs of humans don't exactly handle fear well. The psychological stress, in my opinion, could be an underlying cause for some of the more fantastical and not fact-based musings about what 3I Atlas could be. A brainless and inert hunk of rock smashing into us isn't something we can fight. We can't reason with it or argue with it. But if it was a giant alien spacecraft, then maybe we'd have a chance. Maybe in some insane way, our brains give us aliens as a coping mechanism. I don't know what you're supposed to do with that information, but hey, there you go. But the good news is that it does not appear that 3I Atlas is going to collide with the Earth anyway. At the time of this writing, 3I Atlas has already passed Mars and is currently on the other side of the Sun from the Earth. It's in an exit trajectory and is projected to pass by Jupiter in March of 2026 before leaving our solar system entirely. What now? So that is what makes 3I Atlas special. But is there anything to suggest that 3I Atlas is actually unnatural? From what I've read, the most compelling reason that people seem to jump to the alien hypothesis is the trajectory. Like with Oumuamua, though, there are many explanations that could account for the speed, direction, and even shape of the orbit. There also was initial debate due to the lack of observation of 3I Atlas's cometary tail, which of course led to arguments about propulsion, just as what happened with Oumuamua. But those arguments died immediately due to later data indicating that there actually is a cometary tail and we can observe it. It's one of the downsides of a live sighting of such an object, I suppose. You have to tune in daily for updates and revisions. So we've had yet another interstellar visitor that popular consensus seems to agree is a naturally occurring object. A bummer for sure for the alien optimists out there. But what would an actual example of an artificial object even look like if it did travel through our solar system? How would we recognize it? Thanks to our friend Avi Loeb and others out there like him, we actually do have a pretty good idea about what to look for, which makes discoveries of any interstellar object incredibly interesting and exciting. So, what are we looking for? Unusual acceleration. As in acceleration that isn't easily explained by gravity or outgassing. Unusual light curve. Fluctuations in brightness that are steady and non-random, like a blinking light with no identifiable natural cause. Radio signals. Perhaps the strongest hint. A radio signal without a natural cause would be incredibly compelling and is something we certainly have not found yet. Stable heat signature. This could indicate an internal power source. Unusual shape. Shapes that don't occur naturally, such as a flat disk or some complex or intricate shape that just doesn't exist in nature. If it's a Borg cube or a Dyson sphere, it's not a comet, you guys. Unorthodox trajectory. A route that suggests deliberate maneuvering, rather than following a typical gravitational path. If you think there's more to 3I Atlas, don't let me kill your optimism. Since I feel like I am being so much of a downer today with my lack of optimism when it comes to 3I Atlas, I have included a clip here from a recent ABC News Chicago interview with Avi Loeb. If anything can make you feel better about being a believer, it's this.
It's very exciting because we've never thought about the potential implications of finding an object that big that could be something other than a rock, an icy rock. Just imagine that it was a technological object that selected this orbit to be aligned with the planets around the sun for a reason. It was designed by some intelligence. And we are not prepared for such a visit. And perhaps the wake-up call from 3I Atlas, this object, will alert us to be more aware of the potential risks. And I wrote actually a white paper to the United Nations that I sent last week with the hope that they will establish an international committee that would analyze future data on other interstellar objects like 3I Atlas that we will get in the decade and examine whether any of them shows anomalies that might be alien technology.
As Avi Loeb said, these discoveries are exciting. This is a really exciting time. There is so much that we can still learn and discover. And for me, someone who always thought that I was born both too late and too early to do or learn anything important, that is a reminder I really needed. In this episode, we explored the mysterious interstellar object, 3I Atlas, examining what it is, who discovered it, and why it has been making headlines. We looked at the scientific explanations that ruled out any paranormal origins, as well as the reasons some still speculate about possible intelligent design. We also discussed why people were drawn to such ideas, despite the lack of evidence, and ended by considering what real proof of extraterrestrial intelligence might look like and how to stay open-minded in the search for it. If you have a story to tell, an episode idea, or if you'd like to join me as a guest, send me an email at paranormaloptimist@gmail.com. As always, you can find all the links to follow the show and all the places to listen in the episode description. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know. If you hated it, well, maybe don't let me know. Life is too short. But if you have any opposing viewpoints on 3i Atlas or some specialized expertise that leads you to a different conclusion, please reach out. I'd love to learn more. Thanks so much for listening to yet another episode of Paranormal Optimist. I'm Stephanie, your host, researcher, writer, and wannabe producer. The music you heard today comes royalty-free from Purple Planet Music. And as always, and until next time, believe a little, doubt a lot, but never stop wondering.